See that guy playing the bass who's kind of blocked by that music stand there? Well, that's me. Hi, I'm Len Colley, and I am a 8th grader at the Peabody School in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I've been a Christian pretty much all of my life. I got baptized when I was super young, as you can see there, and I've been playing music in the youth praise band at my church for a very long time now, and I got confirmed recently as well, and that's where I got that necklace that I showed before. I've been going to the Aldersgate United Methodist Church for my whole entire life. Yeah, I got baptized there, I play music there, that's where everything's happened. And so I have really only seen Christianity through the eyes of a Methodist. And I want to know more. I want to continue my journey in religion, and I want to learn more about Christianity and religion itself and other religions, and mainly how you can make a difference with them, and how all of them are connected in a way so that all of us can come together and make a difference in this world. I reached out to many different congregations in the Charlottesville area besides my church, so then I could see the point of views of different religions and different denominations of Christianity. If I'm being honest, I got rejected by most of them. I didn't hear back from them. They said they couldn't do it, but there were a couple that were nice enough to be a part of the project, and I'm so thankful to have them. And so I went and we met and I interviewed them, and that is what this documentary is about. And I want to find the way we can all make a difference through our faith by making these interviews and really just seeing how we are all the same in our love for our religion and our love for other people. So that is what is about to come up right now. So I first had this whole idea about interviewing members of different congregations in Charlottesville when I saw this thing called Impact, which stands for Interfaith Movement Promoting Action by Congregations Together. And so it's a group of 27 congregations in Charlottesville, and they all come together and they pick topics to address during the year, and then they all work together to make a difference in the community. And the idea of this was super appealing because what I want to do with the project is encourage more people to be like the people who are a part of Impact, where no matter their religion, they just come together and then they make a difference through their faith, despite the fact that they don't have the same religion, and they actually use the fact that they have different religions to drive their process in helping the community. And so what I did originally is I contacted pretty much every congregation that's a part of Impact. I didn't get all of them. I got 20 congregations. I contacted 20 over the course of the whole entire project, and I heard back from 10 of them, but then I ended up only interviewing members from 4 of them. So I'm going to show you all of these interviews right now. So sit back, relax, and see how they're making a difference in our community.
My name is Susan Beers, and I'm the presiding clerk of the Charlottesville Friends meeting. What that means basically is that I'm the person who runs our business meetings, which we have once a month, and sort of keep an eye in general about what's going on in the meeting. If you were to show up here and ask who's in charge, they would say, oh, Susan's in charge, but Susan's really not in charge of anything. So everything is done by committees in the Quaker meeting, but nominally, I'm in charge.
What's your faith's role in your life? What does it really mean to you?
It's a hard question to answer in a way because it feels like it's completely integrated in my life. I mean, it's not like I get up every morning and do Quakerly things, but there's a sense in which the values of the faith are sort of a part of who I am. So there's no big separation. It's not just something that happens on Sunday. Quakers believe that there is the light of the divine in everyone. We don't have clergy, and we meet in silence. And then if someone feels that they have a message which is not just for them, but for the group as a whole, they stand up and they give it. We have 2 worship hours here at Charlottesville Friends, and the early hour, which starts at 8:30, is, I sometimes say that if God wants to give us a message, He's going to have to wake us up. Because there's a lot of dozing that goes on. It tends to be older, which doesn't help the alertness at that hour, and quieter. Not always, but often. Maybe a little bit smaller. And then the 11 o'clock hour, which tends to be more active and younger, and we have what we call first day school, which is like Sunday school, for the 11 o'clock hour. And so the families that have children often come then. It's not unusual at the 8:30 hour for us to be completely silent for an hour. I guess would be really distressing for many people who are not of this faith, but comes to feel comfortable for us. So we're all united by the belief that that each of us has a measure of the light. And so each of us is a minister, if they feel called to speak. And the other thing that unites us is sort of a belief in, we don't have a creed, so you're not required to believe anything, but I would say that most of us try to live our lives through what we call the testimonies. And they include so simplicity, peace, integrity, community. The last one is like care of the environment. So those are the things that we're asked to think about. Each of us is meant to find our own path. What we do is dictated by our own, what we call leadings. And here each of us decides for themselves, pretty much.
Are you guys doing any types of like community service or that type of thing where you're volunteering or doing anything in that manner?
Yes, I don't know everything that everyone's doing for the reasons I just said.
Yeah.
But for example, this week, a group of us drove to Richmond to workshop on deportation defense. So I guess that's a way that we're serving the broader community, just to get some information about that. And then Wednesdays, a couple of us were at the Clergy Collective, which is the group of clergy that was active around the August 12th sort of invasion of the Nazis and KKK and Unite the Right groups. 2 members from our group meet with them, and the one thing I know that they're planning, and I think it's for this coming summer, is a walk from Emancipation Park. One of the members of our meeting is head of one of the subcommittees for that project. We are getting ready for Pacham, Pacham peoples and congregations engaged in ministry. It's the housing of we house the homeless women for 2 weeks in January, but it's really the first 2 weeks in January, so we have to start now because we sort of to dodge the holidays in terms of getting our volunteers ready. 50% of the people who are employed in the meeting are in the healthcare professions or education or other sort of public service sorts of things. So for me, it's hard to separate their community work from their community for the work that they
Yeah.
do. Yeah. Next Thursday, a week from today, we will have our simple meal where we eat rice and beans, and then we make a donation of what we would spend if we were going out for a meal, and that gets sent off to Oxfam and the Blue Ridge Area Food Bank.
Okay.
FCNL, the Friends Committee on National Legislation, is like a lobbying group.
Okay.
And several members of the of our Friends meeting are involved in FCNL, and they had they choose one topic a year, and this time it's to urge people in Congress to not increase military spending.
How people can use their faith to integrate that into doing whatever they want to do to make a difference in that way. I mean, instead of, like, I don't know exactly.
You mean
how
how?
to put it.
Yeah, it is different, and I must tell you that I have a heck of a time sometimes explaining because we try to. I've had a heck of a time explaining to. We're trying to be a part of intercongregational groups, but because our language is a little bit different, and because our way of operation is a little bit different, a lot of times it's people don't understand how it works here. I mean, there are so many ways you can help, and Charlottesville's full of opportunities, really, for intercongregational action. And sometimes they don't understand why we choose to engage in some activities and not in others. And I've tried to explain that it's not that we don't think that the activities that different groups are doing aren't important, because they are. It's a world of things you could do. But that if no one in the meeting is led to do it, then we don't do it, even if it's a good thing to do. And so I've been more than once had conversations where they said, well, can't you encourage your people to do X, Y, or Z? And I know I can mention that X, Y, or Z's out there to do, but I can't make them do it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if someone,
Uh-huh.
if it speaks, as we say, to them, then yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, even if it's really a good thing, then other equally important things to do, don't. Because at a particular point of time, there's not someone who feels that they can carry it. But there's nothing sort of like recruitment or urging or. I mean, I do try and get people to sign up to help with Pachem, but you don't have to do much. You sort of say, here's the sign-up sheet, and it just happens.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So it's because it's such a natural outgrowth. It's not. It's not particularly an issue. I mean, it's really wonderful when someone, like the person who's bringing the film in, has a leading who, I mean, you could just see her glow when she talks about this film and what her plans are for. It's not just that you show the movie. There's a movie plus discussion plus workshop. Of sort of a framework for helping people think about racism that she's sort of organizing, and she does a tremendous amount of work with some support from us. But you can tell when someone sort of really has that enthusiasm in them, and you see that periodically. More or less. I mean, she has a big project, but the rest of us just sort of plod along doing what we feel the Spirit leads us to do.
Yeah. I'd say that the goal of the project is to encourage others to make a difference in the world through their faith. And everything that you just told me is great, because it sort of had me thinking that people, if you have something that you want to do, then you can use your faith to do it, in a way.
Yeah. Whatever it is that one does, if it's framed in one's own mind as if it's sanctified, then you do it differently. And then one experiences less stress, because it's not like, well, I have to do this and I have to do that and I have to do that. If each of them is part of an overarching spiritual leaning, then the time at the gym and the time at the studies and the time at the volunteer place aren't three separate things. That they're all a part of living your life, as we would say, in the light.
Yeah.
Actually, all of that is not something I've just made up. There's some research. In my previous life, I taught psychology, and there's some research that that people who naturally sort of sanctify their goals are able to do them without feeling as scattered and overwhelmed and as we other people can get from time to time. So it's a good thing for me to keep in mind. You just think of it as all a part of the same spiritual journey, then it becomes less of a I need to do this and then I need to do that. The list of things you have to do change. So, and I think most of us do that. I mean, most of us are trying to do that. We don't always succeed. And if your audience is aimed at young people, I imagine. I mean, then you have the whole thing of it's not at all unusual for people to get distracted. It's not exactly like they lose their faith, but they sort of wander away from it in their teenage years. Yeah. And in return, oftentimes they return later. But so many other things are going on. Young people who are teens, preteens into college, that they may or may, I mean, they sort of, it seems to me they sort of hold on to whichever faith they were, they have that information if they were raised in the faith, but it doesn't always enliven them. I mean, for some people it does, but for a great many people it just doesn't. Or it stops making sense altogether if you start learning about a lot of different beliefs. Yeah. So I think it might take a while for most people to come to a point where they really can talk about living the values of their faith. So I don't know. I don't know that there's more that I can say.
Thank you so much for doing all this. Sure. Yeah.
I'm Pastor Lauren Miller. I'm pastor at Peace Lutheran Church here in Charlottesville, and I have been the pastor here almost 4 years. Before that, I served a congregation in Michigan, just outside of Detroit, and it's been a blessing to be in Charlottesville. It's a really great place to serve and do ministry with lots of great folks.
Your whole congregation and what you do and what your take on faith stands for and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So a few years ago, someone at Peace dubbed us the little church that does big things, or like the little church that thinks it's a big church. So we've got right around 300 members, which isn't huge, but the people here want to do big things. And so every year we send a team down to Honduras. We've been doing that for over 10 years. So it's really become a relationship, a partnership. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're going down there to help these poor people. It really is accompaniment and relationship and learning from each other. And that's been a real blessing to our congregation to have that relationship we do go down and do medical clinics and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's been great. We also have a relationship with the Bins Counts Community Center in Southwest Virginia, so we send a team down there every year as well. And same thing, that's been an ongoing partnership, and so a lot of that is just the relationships, just going down and spending time listening to people's stories and praying with them and being there with folks who are struggling with a lot of issues. We also do a youth trip each year, so and this past year it really, well, a lot of years it's become a very intergenerational thing. It's not just the youth, but a lot of adults go too. And so this year we went to Washington, D.C. And went to the African American History Museum, and then did a whole program on institutional and structural racism. So it was really more of a learning thing, of opening ourselves up to hear different stories. And we really feel like that is just as important as anything else we do, that so much of it is about relationship and partnership and understanding other people. And that really does come out of our faith. We believe that God's grace is poured out to us in abundance, and so we are called to share that grace with others. And that happens in a lot of different ways around here, not just through trips that we do, but in day-to-day interactions here as well. So we're involved with Impact, an organization that does justice work here in Charlottesville. We're very involved with Loaves and Fishes. A couple of our members are on the board of Loaves and Fishes, and a number of folks here volunteer there regularly. We serve a meal once a month at the Salvation Army. We've got folks who are involved with Meals on Wheels. So we do a lot of feeding stuff. This current Lutherans like to eat in general, and and that has just sort of developed into a passion of people here is feeding ministries. And so this year our congregation provided a bunch of Christmas gifts for Meals on Wheels folks. We also have a program that's been growing. We just started about a year, maybe 2.5 years ago now. And it's called Hungry Hearts No More, and it's a backpack program where every weekend on Friday, we send food home with kids right in our Hollymead neighborhood who may be food insecure. And it's all done very discreetly so that other kids don't know that these kids are getting this food. But it's enough food for the weekend. For kids who rely on school meals to get their main food, we want to make sure they've got food over the weekend too. So we just finished packing up 13 boxes of 2 weeks worth of food, not just for the kids, but for the whole family for the Christmas break, to help the family get through Christmas break having food. And that program has been really exciting to see it grow and change, because it started out really as a ministry just of our people in our congregation working on it. And it's grown that most of our volunteers now for that program aren't members at Peace. So it really has become a community effort. I think a lot of times people think, Hollymead and Forest Lakes, there's so much money, nobody's hungry there, but there are a lot of people struggling to get by, and it's hidden in this neighborhood, but it's really there. And so to feel like we can do something that impacts right here, our immediate neighbors, it's a good feeling. And we don't know who they are. It's all anonymous. It's all done through the school, so the guidance counselor makes sure that they get to the families. But just to know that, our neighbors need help too, and our neighbors are showing up to help each other. To be a community center like that is really, really good, and what we strive to be around here. We're not just a church for ourselves. We're a church for the world, and that starts right here in Hollymead and Forest Lakes.
I guess maybe you could talk a little bit about what your faith means to you personally, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my faith is so foundational to who I am. I like to joke that I was a Lutheran before I was born, because I was. I went to church in my mom's womb, and so I was raised in the church. It's always been a part of who I am, and I think, for me, it all began in the waters of baptism and being named and claimed as God's own child. And there have definitely been times in my life where I've pushed back against that. I went through a time, particularly in high school, where I just wasn't sure what I believed or, if any of this was true and worth following. And through a number of situations and experiences and people in my life, really came to understand God more deeply and more personally, and own that faith that I'd sort of been swimming in my whole life. When I went off to college, I didn't think I was going to go to seminary. I was all about math and science, and that was my thing. And I had a pastor friend who said, if you think maybe you're being called to ministry, run away from it. And if you find yourself being dragged back, then maybe you have a call. And that's what happened to me. I really felt myself being dragged back. I just couldn't not live out my faith in this way. So that's a little bit of my journey that got me to church leadership as a pastor. I think since then, it's been a humbling journey just to realize how much I don't know, and the mystery that is God and that is our faith. So I think that's part of you asked what my faith means to me, and that's part of it, is that it's not a static thing. It's not like once I have faith, okay, I've got it, and that's it. We can just move forward now. I think what I appreciate about my faith and what I appreciate about God is that it's so dynamic and changing, and to see the different ways that God shows up in other people and in my life in ways and places I would never expect, and just to know that is pretty powerful. Yet that's what we get to do. We get to live into that relationship each day of our lives. And what a blessing that is.
We could talk a little bit about what is different at Peace Lutheran, and that, is there anything really special or specific that you're doing here, either just in your faith specifically, or when helping others, or just special things that make Peace Lutheran what it is?
Yeah. There are a lot of things I think that are special about this community. Well, our mission statement is God loves us and calls us to love God, love one another, grow in Christ, and go in Christ. And we really try to live that out, those four things. So discipleship, just following Jesus, is really important to us as a community, and we try to do it in those four ways. Loving God through worship and through our stewardship of our resources, and loving one another through all the many ministries that we do, and growing in Christ through our learning and study of Scripture together, and going in Christ. That we can't just stay in this building, but we've got to be out in the world. I think something else that makes this place special is that we really want this building to be used, and it's very rare for the parking lot to be empty. We have over 30 groups that use our space, and so we've got Girl Scout troops, and we've got 8 AA meetings every week, and we've got Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, AA. We have a Spinners Guild, we have a diabetes support group, we've got 2 other congregations who use our space. We have a Seventh-day Adventist group that uses our worship space on Saturdays, and we have a Chinese gospel church that uses our space on Friday nights. And so, really wanting this to be a place for the community to gather. Yeah. hope continues. I love that the leadership here is so open to inviting people in and use our space. And that, it means wear and tear on the building. It means increased cleaning costs and all of those things. But what good is this? What good are we as a community as a church community, if it's just an empty building all week, locked up? I think we really strive to invite people in, and then we strive to go out ourselves and live out our faith in our daily lives. Not just through special activities, but just through our vocations, through the things that God has called us to do. As a teacher, as a doctor, as an engineer, as a whatever. That God uses us in those places too. We've also got a lot of care ministries that I'm proud of. I think I can say that. The stuff that other people in this place do to care for one another. So we have a really active prayer shawl ministry that gets together every week and knits prayer shawls, and we're probably sending 4 or 5 of those out every week, not just to people here, but friends and family members and just people that people hear about that think, they could maybe use a prayer shawl. And so these shawls are knit, with a prayer in each stitch. And then we set them out here in the sanctuary, and people kind of lay their hands on and pray for the recipient, and then we send that off. And so that's another ministry that I think has a much wider impact through the work that these women do. We've got a prayer bead ministry. We've got a card ministry where people get together and make these beautiful cards that are sent out then to folks who are struggling or hurting. I'm proud of this place. They do a lot of great stuff, and I can say that because a lot of it I feel like I can't take credit for. So I don't want to be like, oh, my church is great. That's not what I'm saying. It is. That's part of what attracted me to this congregation when I was looking for a new call, was just seeing the many, many ways that people lived out their faith on a day-to-day basis, and that made me want to come and be a part of it. It's been pretty cool.
I'd love to hear about just like who you are and your role in your congregation and everything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
My name is Vicki Bravo, and I'm with Congregation Beth Israel. It's the only synagogue or temple in Charlottesville. It's affiliated with the Reform movement, but we also have services of the conservative movement of Judaism.
Okay.
And my role at Congregation Beth Israel is 2 things. I'm the coordinator for our participation in Impact, which stands for Interfaith Movement Promoting Action by Congregations Together. It's 28 faith congregations of all different faiths, including Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, Unitarian, everything, Baptist. And we work every year, we pick an issue of social justice about how to make our community more just. And so I coordinate our effort at our synagogue. And I'm also in charge of something called the Caring Committee. And that's about life cycle events. Like if someone gets sick, we're available to make meals or sometimes take them to the doctor. If someone passes away, we're available to help with the meal after the funeral. And then we have something called Shiva, which is we have a religious service usually in the home of the family of the person who passed away, and we help sort of coordinate food and things for that.
We could talk about faith's impact on your life a little bit. How would you really describe the impact of faith in your whole life?
I grew up Jewish in Oklahoma City, and there's not a real big Jewish population there. So like in elementary school, I was the only Jewish kid in my class usually. I was the one called on every year to tell the story of Hanukkah. and I loved it actually because it was something special. like I'm the only person I know who enjoyed Hebrew school. You know, it's like I just always liked religion, and so I went from my undergraduate degree. I went to a program in New York between the Jewish Theological Seminary and Columbia University, and studied. I was going to be a Hebrew teacher or a Jewish studies teacher. The last year, I decided I'd rather be a social worker. I worked for 30-something years as a medical social worker, most of the time with patients and families dealing with cancer. And to me, my faith was at the core of what I did. It was sort of like a calling, I guess. Not like for a priest or something, or a rabbi, but in its own way, it sort of felt like I was drawn to it. And Judaism, to me, has always been about how we treat each other. Judaism has lots and lots of rules about how to live. And many of them are ritual things like observing the laws of keeping kosher, for example, or observing the Sabbath. But most of the rules are about how do we treat other people. And there's tons of rules about things like how to do business. For example, rules about having fair weights and measures. Rules about leaving the corner of your field for the poor. Rules about if you hire someone, you pay them immediately. You don't hold on to their pay. Even rules about things like if you find something in the road that was lost, what do you do about it? You know, what's the ethical thing to do? To me, both sides of it are really meaningful. Like I love things like lighting candles Friday night, and the concept that the Sabbath is a piece of time that we actually make holy. We actually make it different. I don't observe all the rules like that Orthodox people do, but we do things to make that period of time different. Or like lighting the Hanukkah candles, or like Passover, having the Passover Seder. That connects me to all the generations of Jews. And I just love that. I love that I'm saying words that people all over the world are saying at the same time, you know, and that we're all connected that way. So I love the ritual part, but I also really love that Judaism is very much about getting along. Like, for example, there's lots of rules about the stranger in your midst always needs to be treated fairly and with respect, because remember, we were strangers in the land of Egypt. Or just rules about don't embarrass people in public. That's a terrible thing in our religion. There's a lot said about that. Or things like if someone says something that insults you, don't hold it in and hold a grudge. Tell them. It's especially about if they do something like unethical, tell them. But also if they do something that hurts you, don't hold a grudge. Because you don't want to put yourself in a position that you might really hurt them later. And so there's just tons of these rules. Or like, if you know that a person is very sensitive about a certain topic, be very careful about how you talk about it. All those kind of things. So I like all of that a lot. And so the natural extension of that, to me, is something like, you see there's a problem in your community, you do something to solve it. So like I told you about impact. So every year we take a subject. So one year we took on the subject of crime and drugs. And we found out that there was no residential substance abuse treatment for women in our community. Women had to go 70 miles. There is for men. It's not enough, but there is for men here, but not for women. So we pressed Region 10, our local mental health agency that's run through the state, and also the city and the county governments. We need this. And so we got it. And they're building it now. And it's opening next year.
Wow.
And the city and the county are each committed to $75,000 for next year for operational funds and also for the years to come. They've committed to supporting it. And Region 10 actually raised the money to build it, and they don't usually do stuff like that. So that's kind of the extension of, in Judaism, there's this famous line, in Hebrew it's tzedek, tzedek tirdof, justice, justice shall you pursue. Things like this, I think, are ways to pursue justice so that a woman who's trying to get better, who's trying to really solve this problem in her life, has a place to go.
Yeah. When you're talking about the whole what you guys were doing in the area and everything, I was wondering if there was anything else that you guys were doing to help the community.
Yeah, one of the big issues in our community is the lack of affordable housing. So a couple of years ago, we actually started looking at the issue of it's so expensive for seniors here. And we bill ourselves as a retirement community, but it's a retirement community if you're rich enough to afford it. What we looked at was how to make it more affordable for seniors, and we narrowed down to affordable housing because housing is the biggest expense for most people. We focused on the county, on Albemarle County, because we felt like they had less going on to promote affordable housing than the city does.
Okay.
And so we're now working with the county government, the Board of Supervisors. In their comprehensive plan, it says that one of their goals is affordable housing for all, but they specifically also mention seniors and people with disabilities. So we're pressing on that. It's a hard fight because it involves a lot of different players. It involves the government. It also involves developers. It also involves that with seniors and people with disabilities, it's extra important that the housing be accessible to the services they need, like medical services, grocery stores, pharmacies, all that. So we're working on that. But at the same time, this year, we picked affordable housing again, but this time for the city. In some ways, I think this is our hardest issue. Some of the other issues we've done in the past, we've been doing this for 11 years.
Wow.
So the first issue was transportation. So you know the county office building where you get benefits and food stamps is out 5th Street Extended.
Mm-hmm.
There was no bus service to there.
Oh.
So can you imagine you're a person who needs to go apply for benefits. You have to take a taxi,
Yeah.
or you need to go, turn in paperwork or something. There's no public transportation to get there. If you're going to get food stamps, you can't afford a taxi. So we got the transit system to extend the bus route out there. Also, there's the Southwood Mobile Home Park. So those people going to work had no public transportation before it, and then now they do. But it was a win-win because not only could people get bus service to the county office building or to work, but the bus system got more customers.
Yeah.
So it was excellent. Another year what we did was we were one of the agencies that worked on the free dental clinic because the dental, there just wasn't enough opportunity for dental care for low-income people. We worked with other organizations to get the free dental clinic done. Another year, we were looking at mental health care in general, and we narrowed it down to children. And we found out that children who either have Medicaid or are uninsured, who go to Region 10, the state-supported mental health clinic, could only go Friday mornings from like 8 to 12
Wow.
to see 4 psychiatry residents from UVA. They were supervised by a psychiatrist. So can you imagine, first of all, the waiting list got to be months long. Second of all, can you imagine a family having a child in a mental health crisis being told you have to wait months not only that, but the psychiatrist was the entry to other services. They could get other financial services, they could get case management, they could get hooked up to other things, but not until they saw the psychiatrist. So we got them to hire a full-time psychiatrist. They ended up switching that to a psychiatric nurse, which seemed for some reason to work better, but they also put in an emergency clinic, and so the kids didn't have to wait so long, and the families. So that was another thing. Another one we did was people were coming out of prison with no psych medicine, or like a week's worth of psych medicine or something. Well, they usually had no money, no job, no way to get to the doctor. So we worked out with Region 10 a system. I think they would get a prescription to last them longer, but they'd also get seen right away. And that way they'd be in the system and they wouldn't just land back in an emergency room and back in prison. Another program we did was translation services for people in the justice system. The officers were given more resources. If they didn't have people who could translate, they have a phone service, they have different things. So that a person who maybe spoke a very rare language would have access to somebody to translate for them. If someone's a refugee from Africa, even a lot of African people don't know their language, you know. So one year they took up the problem of there are so many people who don't have permanent housing. And what they found was that all the homeless agencies were working sort of independently of each other. And so they got them to form a round table of all the agencies. And what that did was not only make them coordinate their efforts better, but they had more access to federal funding because they were working together. So they leveraged I want to say $1 million or something. But part of what came out of that was building the crossings at 4th and Preston, which was built for people who chronically had no home. Those are some of the things that we've done over the years.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinion on, how do you think any person can help their community and help others through their faith? How can their faith, put them in a community that does that, or give them the inspiration to want to do it in a way?
I guess my first thing would be to say to pray about it, and see what guidance they get that way. To think about what kinds of things they are drawn to. For me, being a social worker, community organizing is part of social work. And also I grew up in the days of the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War protest movement, and also the Soviet Jewry protest movement, which got a lot of Jews out of the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. And so it was something that I knew about and I had seen in action. I think it's important for people to do things that they have a proclivity for or an interest in. For example, a friend of mine volunteers at the preschool at our synagogue because she just loves being around the kids.
Yeah.
Other people, a lot of people I know do the free clinic or book buddies, I think it's called, where they help kids with reading. Mm-hmm. So it's important just to think about what do you like to do. Yeah. And then if you're interested in doing it in a community of faith, to go through a clergy person, if you know a clergy person, or call a church or synagogue, because the clergy know a lot about what's going on in town that people can volunteer for. And it might not be through their particular church, but they'll know about it. There's so much stuff out there. It's good to just kind of follow your interest and see where it leads you. You want to go with your passion.
Yeah.
You know, that's where you get excited about something.
Uh-huh.
And like there are things that I don't do that like a lot of people I know do. Like I don't do the free clinic because I'm just not drawn to it, and also because I did a lot of that kind of stuff already, and I felt like doing something different. I know someone who did mediation, and it's like it's really fascinating, and you really have to learn things to do it.
Yeah.
But man, you see the effects of it right there.
Yeah.
One of the fun things about doing this work is you meet other people who are interested in it.
Yeah.
And like one of the things I love about Impact is I made new friends. And we're people of faith. And that's something we have in common, and it doesn't make any difference if it's the same faith or a different faith, but it's like how we look at the world. So I've had really fun conversations with people, and it's like, yeah, I agree with that. I feel that way too.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very rewarding. I have these friends who I used to work with. We met 40 years ago. We all worked in a hospital in Houston, and we all started the same day.
Wow.
And we became a friendship group, and we get together from time to time. We're trying to get together like every year now in Texas. So one is Catholic, two are Protestants. One's Baptist, and one is another form of Protestant, and I'm Jewish. One is Hispanic, one's African American. So we're like a little United Nations.
Wow.
But we're all people of faith. So we pray together and we talk about our faith, and it's like, so that's a really, I bring it up because that's a really nice way to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you bring that aspect of yourself into it.
Everything I've been hearing about just coming together and making a difference to the faith, and how it can bring so many people together. Yeah, it's really great to hear all about it. So.
Well, it's great for me to hear a young person like you be excited about it, and especially right now in Charlottesville. This is what we need to do.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people, you know, like Impact has been doing this for a long time, and this is what Charlottesville's trying to do now.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to come around. It's a hard passage for Charlottesville right now.
Yeah.
But Charlottesville's a really interesting and unique place. And I think spiritually it is too.
Yeah.
I mean, how many small towns have something like Yogaville down the road, you know? And like we've got this Buddhist group here, you know, and we've got this wonderful mosque. And, you know, it seems like well integrated into town. It's like, you know, it's like we've got a lot of good stuff going on.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to you, and
Thank
like
you,
I
I
said,
did too.
I'm
Yeah.
encouraged to see young people interested in this.
Yes, my name is Daniel Shisto, and I'm the pastor of the Charlottesville Seventh-day Adventist Church.
When did you start being the pastor?
My wife and I moved here 5 years ago,
Okay.
and so I first started off working as a chaplain at UVA Hospital,
Yeah.
and then this position opened up, and that's how I came here.
We could talk a little about faith's impact specifically on your life and
Yeah.
what it means to you.
Well, I wasn't always a pastor. I was working. I'm from New York originally, and I was working in New York City for 10 years in business. And as I was working and I was making more and more money, I thought I should have been getting more and more happy, but it wasn't happening. And then I actually became a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I didn't grow up Seventh-day Adventist. And as I became a member, I started to get involved in the different activities, the different ministries of the church. I started to get involved in the community, trying to make a difference, and I was finding happiness in that.
Yeah.
So I was volunteering like a ton at church, and I'd wake up on Monday and I just kind of dread going to work. I'm like, oh man, I gotta go back to this place, and it just felt like a grind. It felt like I was just helping a company get rich and making money myself at the same time, so it wasn't feeding my soul. And I'm like, hey, I'm having a really good time volunteering at church. Why don't I just make this what I do for a living? So I quit my job. I went to school for 3 years. And so, yeah, like my faith really took off once I started to give back to the community and actually change my life completely.
Could you maybe tell me a little bit about Seventh-day Adventist and what makes it special and
Sure.
specific things about it? Yeah.
Well, Seventh-day Adventist Church is a Christian denomination, Protestant denomination, and what makes us, I guess, unique is that in our name we believe in the seventh day, which we call the Sabbath. We get that from creation in Genesis, where God worked for 6 days and he rested on the Sabbath, and then reinforced that in Exodus, where in the Ten Commandments he says, remember the Sabbath day. And so that's kind of central to who we are, as well as Adventist, which is the advent of Jesus, the second coming. So those are our two core principles, the Sabbath day and the soon coming of Jesus. In addition to that, or even well before that, we're just a Jesus-centered community which try to live out the teachings of Jesus.
Maybe we could talk about what Seventh-day Adventist is doing in the community to help make a difference in a way, or anything of that sort.
We meet every week on Saturday, and our messages are geared toward inspiring hope. So that's 52 times a year that we're gathering together, trying to, fill people's lives with hope of a better, today than the things that we're seeing on the news and in the world around us. That's probably our core. We also have a pretty robust social justice ministry.
Okay.
Where we seek to solve issues that are affecting our members or just community members. It goes through different cycles. Just in a real brief nutshell, what we do with that ministry is we start off by having listening meetings. We listen. We have house meetings of about 10 to 12 people. We listen to one another. We ask what's going on in our lives, what's keeping us up at 3 a.m., what are the different things happening that are concerning. Then from there we kind of compile a list of the things that are happening in our congregation. And this justice ministry is actually in partnership with 27 different faith congregations. So everyone's doing the same thing. Then we put all that together and we see what the top 3 issues are in all of our congregations. Let's say, it's educational debt, affordable housing, and lack of jobs. So then, with those top 3 things, all of the congregations come together, and it's very democratic, and we vote, and whatever issue that, wins, we go after, we try to seek a solution for that for the entire year. So then we move into our second phase, which is research. Now that we identified a problem like affordable housing, then we move into the research phase. Our congregation, along with all the others, we start to look into what's going on with affordable housing in Charlottesville, who's in charge, who could help us, that kind of thing. So we identify an issue, we identify a solution, we identify who could help us, and then the third phase of our ministry is we move into action. And so we have a big meeting. It's the largest public meeting in Charlottesville, actually. We invite the people who we identified could be helpers, and then we invite them on stage and ask them, say, hey, we identified this problem. We identified you as someone who has power to help us. There's 1,000 of us here tonight. Are you interested in partnering with us and helping us? And so the fourth part is celebration. We've had many successes in the past, and so we celebrate those. And that's pretty much the social justice ministry.
Are there any specific issues that you remember your ministry focusing on in the past?
Yes. 3 years ago now, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 years ago, we had focus on unemployment among young people. We noticed that unemployment was high, but specifically with young adults, it was extremely high. So we identified that as a problem. We voted on it. We saw that UVA Hospital was like the main employer in our area, so we approached them. It was a several-year process, but in the end they agreed to create a program that would hire young people, train them as certified nurse assistants, and then hire them at the end of the training. So far, I believe 30 or 40 students have been trained and hired. So that's pretty cool. One young person from our church here in Charlottesville was accepted, was hired, was trained. So it was pretty neat to see a group of people in a church affect a change that was so big that actually got a job for someone, for 40 people actually. Another thing we did was 2 or 3 years ago, we saw that is actually kind of crazy. It was over 300 or 350 elementary to high school age students had seriously considered suicide within the last 4 months. We found that in someone's study during our research phase. The issue was mental health among young population, and so we researched it. We found that in someone's study, and that was in Albemarle. That was right in our neck of the woods. And we also saw in our research that it was an estimated 6 months for young people to have an appointment with a mental health provider.
Oh, wow.
So they were kind of considering suicide, in a 4-month time period, but the help was 6 months away. So we decided to do something about that. We partnered with Region 10, and they're a mental health provider in this area. And so they, because of our petitioning, they hired a full-time child psychologist, which was able to, be effective in this area. Those are two that kind of stick out recently. And currently, we are trying to work a solution for affordable housing for seniors. We saw that the number one goal of seniors as they age is to remain independent and remain in their homes. And we also saw that a disproportionately large amount of their income was going towards housing. So it's that doesn't leave them with too many options. So we're in the midst right now of trying to understand how we could affect change to make housing more affordable for seniors who want to stay in this area.
We could talk a little bit about how you personally think people of faith can come together and make a difference.
I think that, a faith without action is just dead. It's useless. The whole point of our faith, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, is that our faith impacts the way we live. It produces a positive change for the good. And so I feel that people of faith, if they're just coming together to be inspired and just leave it at that, it's like, something is wrong in that situation. It's like you're being inspired to become a better person. You're being inspired to make this world around us a better place. So that's what faith, means to me. It means impacting our lives to affect change in our personal walk, in our neighbor's personal walk, and that's everything. I mean, from being kind and loving and gentle, toward also caring about our neighbor who's having a hard time feed the kids. I mean, it's just like a holistic thing between ourselves, our neighbor, and our God.
Okay.
Well, best wishes on this
Got
project.
it. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so those interviews took up quite a bit of time, but I wanted to reflect a little bit more on what they really meant and how I now think we can all make a difference through our faith. And so all 4 of the people I interviewed were members of congregations who were a part of Impact, like I said before. When I asked what their congregations were doing, multiple of them said the same things, and I thought that was great because it really showed how enthusiastic they all were in really helping alongside people from other faiths. And it really showed how people from different faiths have already made a difference in our community by working together. I asked them all the same questions, and I got some of the same answers, some of different answers, but there are 2 main parts of that. The first was, if you want to make a difference through your faith, then you have to do what you are called to do.
But I can't make them do it.
Yeah.
I mean, if someone,
Uh-huh.
if it speaks, as we say, to them, then yeah. But the rest of us just sort of plod along, doing what we feel the Spirit leads us to do.
Not just through special activities, but just through our vocations, through the things that God has called us to do, as a teacher, as a doctor, as an engineer, as a, whatever, that God uses us in those places too.
My faith was at the core of what I did. It was sort of like a calling, I guess. Not like for a priest or something, or a rabbi, but in its own way, it sort of felt like I was drawn to it. Mm-hmm. I think it's important for people to do things that they have a proclivity for or an interest in. You want to go with your passion.
Yeah.
That's where you get excited about something.
Uh-huh.
I think that, a faith without action is just dead. It's like, useless. The whole point of our faith, in my humble opinion, is that our faith impacts the way we live. It produces a positive change for the good. And so I feel that people of faith, if they're just coming together to be inspired and just leave it at that, it's like, something is wrong in that situation. It's like you're being inspired to become a better person. You're being inspired to make this world around us a better place.
They said it different ways depending on which faith they were in, because their faiths believe in different things, but they all meant the same thing, which was, if you're not called to do something, then you shouldn't do it. And if you are called to do something, then use your faith to go out and do it. Because it will guide you and give you life and just this joy, knowing that you're doing something to help and that you're doing it through the thing that connects you to all these other people, and that's sort of the backbone of your life itself. And then the other thing that I was mainly getting was just work together. All 4 of them said, if you're going to come together with the same drive and motive to help, then we will help.
Then, the time at the gym and the time at the studies and the time at the volunteer place aren't 3 separate things, that they're all a part of living your life, as we would say, in the light. You just think of it as all part of the same spiritual journey then. means, less of a I need to do this and then I need to do that.
I mean, it's just like a holistic thing between ourselves, our neighbor, and our God.
You know, to be a community center like that is really, really good, and what we strive to be around here. But, you know, we're not just a church for ourselves, we're a church for the world. And that starts right here in Hollymead and Forest Lakes. What good is this? What good are we as a community as a church community, if it's just an empty building all week, locked up?
I love that I'm saying words that people all over the world are saying at the same time, you know, and that we're all connected that way. Like, we're people of faith, and that's something we have in common, and it doesn't make any difference if it's the same faith or a different faith, but it's like how we look at the world. So I've had really fun conversations with people, and it's like, yeah, I agree with that. I feel that way too.
Yeah.
You know, and it's very rewarding.
So it's pretty neat to like see a group of people in a church like affect a change that was so big that actually got a job for someone, for 40 people actually.
So one is Catholic, two are Protestants, one's Baptist, and one is another form of Protestant, and I'm Jewish. One is Hispanic, one's African American. So we're like a little United Nations.
Wow.
But we're all people of faith. So we pray together and we talk about our faith, and it's like, so that's a really, I bring it up because that's a really nice way to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, you bring that aspect of yourself into it.
Because like they said, even though we have different religions, we all believe in helping others and in working to make our world a better place. And I think now, after hearing that using our faith is the best way to do that. And now I want to address you, finally. No matter what religion you practice, no matter what congregation you go to, no matter how strong your faith is, no matter how long you've been practicing your faith, whether it may be long, short, or somewhere in the middle, then if you want to make a difference, go out, find other people who share your drive that's powered by their faith and their love for others, and you go with them and work to make the difference that you want to make. Because doing whatever it is you want to do in the community alongside the other people of faith that you hold dear, then you will find happiness. So, I ask you, how are you going to make a difference through your faith?